Welcome to Cornerstone. I'm so excited that you guys are here. Thank you for joining us today. Everybody online, same goes to you as well. Thank you for joining us today. Hey, thanks to everybody for praying for me. I was pretty sick this last week. I don't know what it was, if it was a food allergy or what. I'm getting some tests done to see if the doctor can kind of identify what exactly was going on. But how about Pastor Brenda stepping right in? She stepped up to the plate. She found out she was going to be preaching Sunday at about 5 a.m. on Sunday. So pretty good. Pretty good for her to be able to fill in like that. But hey, we are in part 2 of this series, Here and Now. This is a series where we're focusing on the idea that God's best for our life, God's best, His plan, His will for us, doesn't always exist in some far-off future. That's kind of a popular rallying cry in churches, right? The best is yet to come. The best is yet to come, which is true in one sense, right? There are great days ahead whenever God is your king. When you're following Jesus as Lord, you can believe that some great days are ahead, but the idea that the best is yet to come always also implies that the mediocre is now, right? That like the best is down the road, but all the current days that we're living in are just, can we get these over with to get to where we're really supposed to be? And what we believe here at Cornerstone, what we're talking about in this series is the idea that no, if you're following Jesus as Lord and as King, every single day can be a great day. God's best for your life isn't just for down the road, it's for here and now as well. And we're believing that. We're believing that not just on a spiritual level, we're believing that on a physical level, right? In this series, we're talking about our building campaign and our push to have a new facility, to renovate our current one, which we are in need of, right? Can I get an amen on that? We need it. I don't know if you've noticed the lighting setup today. You might have thought, oh, this is a little weird. The lights are kind of on during worship. They're normally not. What's up with these? Is Pastor Jacob just getting really vain and he wants everyone to really get to see the good lighting? Our lighting, like we had issues with our lighting this last week. And so this is what we had to do to fill in. We need new lighting. I told you a few weeks ago, our pipes almost froze outside not too long ago. We just got a lot of stuff. We need help, right? We need help. So that's what we're doing. We've got this campaign, this Here and Now campaign to renovate and to build this new facility here at Cornerstone. And it's so cool because if you've been with us on this journey since we started this a year ago, we have just seen God come through time and time again, haven't we? He's just continually come through for us in so many ways. And we actually have a really cool thing I wanted to share today. I'm going to block out the people's name because they want to remain anonymous. But just this week, another example of God moving in just a mighty way. I've right here got a check for $41,000 for our building campaign. $41,000. Just so incredible and amazing people who made this donation to our building campaign, people who are believing, just like we said, that God's best isn't just in some far-off future, but it's right here and it's right now. If you were with us last week, you know Pastor Brenda mentioned the idea around our building campaign that we actually have had a pretty grassroots campaign so far, right? A lot of small donations, not a lot of large donors so far, and so this is one of the biggest checks. I think this is the biggest check we've gotten so far. We've had a lot of small donors, not a lot of big ones, and in a sense, that's on purpose. Like, that's on purpose. We actually have a few people in mind to talk to, a few people to reach out to whenever it comes to people who could write pretty big checks for a building campaign, but we specifically have put off talking to them. Like, we've waited. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the main reasons is we want to make sure that we as a church are doing everything we can first. We don't want to go meet with anybody and they find out that we've barely raised any money and they're like, oh, so basically your church doesn't want to sacrifice. They just want me to come in and be an angel investor and build this thing for them. Like, we want people to know, hey, look, our church is doing everything we can to partner. We're doing everything we can. We're sacrificing. We're trusting God in very real, tangible, sacrificial ways. So that's the first reason. Another reason is we wanted to wait until we had really solid plans of what this building is going to look like and what the new building is going to look like, right? Like, we don't want this to just be theoretical because There may be a few exceptions to the rule, but generally speaking, people who can write checks with a lot of zeros, they want to see plans, right? They don't want to hear, we got a really cool idea, like it's going to be sweet. Like, no, that's, they're not breaking out the checkbook for that, right? They want to know, I'm giving money towards something that has actually been planned out, that actually has strategy around it, that you guys have really thought about things. So we wanted to wait until we actually have really solid plans, because those kind of donors don't give to theoretical ideas, generally speaking. I can't remember who this quote is attributed to. It's been attributed to a few different people, but I love this quote: a vision without a plan is a hallucination, right? A vision without a plan is a hallucination, and that's what our new facility, that's what our dreams of a new facility are if we would have never taken the steps to get where we are today. Just a hallucination. Just man, wouldn't it be great if one of those days we had a new building? Oh, wouldn't that be awesome, right? I've seen this happen in my life every single year. Now, this year, I hope is going to be different, but every single year, I start off my year and I fill out my calendar for the upcoming year. Like, I set out different things that I know I want to do. So stuff like me and Jessica, we always think it would be fun to do like a Christmas in July day on like July 25th to kind of celebrate with the kids and just have fun, right? Just a little fun day. So I add that, and they're like, oh, Christmas in July. And I add in different events at the IX Center, like, oh, we'll go to that one, we'll do that one, that'll be fun. I add in like Hollow Weekends, like, oh, we'll definitely go to Cedar Point for Hollow Weekends on this date. So I add all these things in, and after I fill it in, I look at my year and I'm like, this is gonna be a blast, like, this is gonna be awesome. The problem is, I often don't move from the calendar to the to-do list. You follow me? Like, I put things into my calendar, all these wishes, all these hopes, all these dreams that I have, but I don't actually schedule out, okay, so to go to Cedar Point for Hollow Weekends, we need to make sure we have a babysitter, we need to be saving up money, need to be planning for that. Like, that stuff doesn't happen. And so when it gets to October, when it gets to September, around that time of year, we're scrambling. We're scrambling. If we can't find anyone, it's like, well, I guess next year, right? We'll get to it next year. And that happens way too often, way too often. My vision, my plan, doesn't actually have a plan. And so that vision is more of a hallucination. And again, for our church, we can't just dream and hope that we have a new facility. We have to actually plan around it. In your life, if you want your life to actually be a success, if you want to hit the goals that you want to hit at your work, if you want to hit the goals with your family, if you want to hit goals with your kids, if you want to have the kind of life that you want to have, it's not going to happen by just hoping and dreaming and wishing. You have to have plans. You have to strategize. You have to look and actually make plans, set things into place, make to-do lists for these things. Otherwise, the vision for your life will be nothing more than a hallucination. If you're on Facebook, you may have seen my wife has posted some pictures. She's actually at Disney this weekend. Just her, not me and the kids. We're at home. It's her and her sister are down there. And this is how this happened. So for a while, they've talked about like how fun it would be to have a sisters kind of weekend, to do something like this. And so they both love Disney. And a couple months back, Rachel, her sister, saw an email come through for flights, I think for Frontier Airlines, flights from Cleveland to Orlando, round trip. So we're not talking the trip down is this price and then the trip back's another price. Round trip, $52. $52. That's cheaper than a tank of gas, right? To fly to Florida and get back. And so she saw that, told Jessica about it, and they're like, okay, we're going to plan this out. So Rachel, because of her work, she works at Allstate. She gets really good discounts on different things like hotels and rental cars. So pretty much the only thing that they have to pay full price for is a Disney ticket. But even that, they have Disney gift cards that they've saved up over some time. So every aspect of this trip is a discount. There's a coupon. There's something for it, right, to make this doable. And so they're down there. They're having a blast. And the only reason they're able to do all of this stuff is because it wasn't just a dream. It wasn't just, oh, wouldn't that be fun if one of these days we did that? Wouldn't that be cool? They planned that thing out. They've been strategizing. They've been looking up coupons and looking up discounts, and hey, if we do this on this day, if we fly on this day of the week, it'll actually be cheaper than that amount. And they've been doing all of the research, all of the planning to make sure that dream wasn't just a dream. They put planning behind it. The same is true in our lives, not just for us as a church, it's talking about building our new church facility, but us as people, us as individuals. If we want our lives really to amount to anything, we got to plan. We got to strategize. We got to build out philosophies of how we're going to do things, how we're going to approach life, and then actually get to it. We can't just dream. We need a plan. Now, today, what we're going to be looking at in our remaining time, we're going to be studying from the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah. So if you have that, it's an Old Testament book. You can turn to Nehemiah. If not, we're going to have the scriptures up here on the screen just a little bit. But let me give you some background before we dive in, just a real brief kind of Cliff Notes idea of who Nehemiah is. So Nehemiah is a man, he's a Jewish man who was living in Persia at this time. He's serving the Persian king as his cupbearer, and he is in Persia, this Jewish man, he's living in Persia because the Jewish nation is falling apart. It's falling apart. They have been sinning against God. They've been rebelling against God's commands decade after decade, century after century, and God has left their sin to its own device, and it's taken it to the point where their entire nation is crumbling and falling apart. And so their nation of Israel is now under Persian rule. The Persian Empire now controls it. And so when we get to this part that we're going to be reading from Nehemiah chapter 2, we see Nehemiah's heart is broken when he realizes the terrible state of the city of Jerusalem, the capital, the headquarters for Israel. And so that's where we pick up. This is in Nehemiah chapter 2. What I'm going to do, we're going to read verses 1 through 8 and then kind of work our way back through it for the remainder of the sermon. So this is what it says. In the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, when wine was brought for him, I took the wine and gave it to the king. I had not been sad in his presence before. So the king asked me, "Why does your face look so sad when you're not ill? This can be nothing but sadness of heart." I was very much afraid, but I said to the king, "May the king live forever. Why should my face not look sad when the city where my ancestors are buried lies in ruins, and its gates have been destroyed by fire?" The king said to me, "What is it you want?" Then I prayed to the God of heaven, and I answered the king, "If it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor in his sight, let him send me to the city in Judah where my ancestors are buried so that I can rebuild it." Then the king, with the queen sitting beside him, asked me, "How long will your journey take, and when will you get back?" It pleased the king to send me, so I set a time. I also said to him, "If it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of Trans-Euphrates so that they will provide me safe conduct until I arrive in Judah. And may I have a letter to Asaph, keeper of the royal park, so he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel by the temple and for the city wall and for the residence I will occupy." And because of the gracious hand of my God was on me, the king granted my requests. Now, this book, this book of Nehemiah, this is something that every single church, I promise you, every single church that's ever done a building campaign has preached on Nehemiah. It just happens, every single church. And that's for good reason, because there's such valuable lessons in this story. There's such valuable lessons in how Nehemiah handles this situation that we can take and not just apply to our own building campaign, but I hope you take and apply these principles to your personal life, to the plans that you have as you are trying to live out God's will for your life. I hope you apply these individually as well. So if you're taking notes today, the title of today's sermon is From Concept to Concrete. From Concept to Concrete. Now, every great concept that's ever been conceived starts with a question. Why? Why? Every concept starts with a why. Nehemiah had a why. Cornerstone, we have a why. We have a why for why we're building this new facility. I know we've had some people have actually said, they've come in here and they've been like, "Well, why would you want to build? Isn't this great?" And not dogging on our church building or anything, but no, it's not. It's not great. It's good. It's good for now. It's serviceable. It's meeting its needs. But man, we've got such bigger vision for our church than this building. We just have much bigger vision. Can I tell you, Cornerstone's unique? We're a unique church. We reach people in a very unique, special way. There's just something going on here. There's something going on in our church, and we want people to be able to be a part of that. We want people to be able to come here, experience the way that we live out the kingdom of God, the way that we love like Jesus. Sadly, we are unique. Shouldn't be that way. Shouldn't be that way. But we want people who have little to no church background, people who have tons of church background, people who have some church background but have been hurt. We want everybody to be able to come here, feel welcome, to feel the Spirit move, to feel the love of Jesus in such a radical way. And that's why we need this facility. We need more room. Because let me tell you, there's a lot of people who need that. There's a whole lot of people who need the way that Cornerstone loves and expresses the kingdom of God. More than this room can fill, absolutely. That is a moment we should be clapping. More than this room can fill. More than this room can fill. We need more room. And we need this facility. The why isn't so that we can have a church that's like Instagram worthy. Like a church that like, oh, this is a church I'm proud to post on my Instagram because it looks sharp and everything looks nice. Like, that's not why we're doing it. The why is the people. The why is the people. That's what captures my heart. And whenever I think about the people who will be able to come here and grow with us and be here their whole life, just being a part of our church family, that's what gets me pumped. That's what gets me excited and makes my heart catch on fire as I think about the future of Cornerstone. And I think about that and I see how Nehemiah had a very similar thing. His heart was broken. His heart was broken when he looked at the city, this city that was supposed to be a symbol, a signal of God's presence to the rest of the world, lying in ruins. And it broke his heart. It broke his heart. He could barely take it. You see, I think about that and I think, you know what? What captures God's heart should capture my heart. What stirs God's heart should stir my heart. What breaks God's heart should break my heart. A beautiful church building doesn't stir or capture God's heart. Hurting people who are far from God, that captures his heart. That's why we need the building. That's our why. That's the concept that we're building from. People need this. Nehemiah had a why. The city was fallen apart. The city that God was supposed to shine his presence through was in ruins. See, what captures God's heart should capture my heart. And so I want to ask you on a personal level, the things that capture your heart, are they capturing God's? The plans that you're making in your own personal life, I have no idea what they are, but are the plans that you're making, are they things that also stir God's heart? Are we dreaming the right dreams? Are we hoping for the right things? Are we praying for the right things? Are our dreams aligned with God? I can tell you I've had countless times in my life where that hasn't been the case, and I am so thankful for the no that God has given me at different points in my life. Can anyone else relate to that? A little amen from moments in your life where God has said no to something, and you are so thankful he told you to leave that concept on the drawing board. You're so thankful that you're like, you know what? I am so glad that didn't move from concept to concrete. Thank God that relationship did not move from concept to concrete. Thank goodness I didn't go any further in that line of work. Thank God for this moment where he told me no, because what I was dreaming wasn't the same kind of thing that captures or stirs his heart. God sometimes will tell us no, and we should be thankful for that no, thankful for those concepts that stay on the drawing board. I remember whenever I was graduating from high school, I was contemplating going away for college, which is a good thing. A lot of my friends went away for college. I was kind of on the fence about it. I kind of wanted to, kind of didn't want to. I wasn't totally sure. Kind of felt God's nudging towards staying home, even though all of my friends were going off somewhere. We're going to Toledo or, different places around the state. And so I followed that nudging, felt like, you know what, I'm going to stay home. And thank God I did. Thank God I didn't take that other path, because by staying home, I was able to be here and work at the church. I was able to meet my wife. I just look at how all these things lined up in my life. And I'm so thankful that God had that no for me, right? That concept, that idea of, you know what, hey, I could go and that would be fun. And maybe I could go to a smaller college and try to play basketball there or something like that. That'd be a blast. But God said no to that. And thank God he did, because my life would be in such a different place. What captures God's heart should capture our heart. We see that as our own story for our church. We see how our old facility, we had a no from God on that one, didn't we? We had a no from God. That was a hard one. We had our own facility, And we've talked about this time and time again. We ended up having to give it up. We gave it up of our own accord, right? We decided to not pursue trying to hold on to it anymore, and that was hard. But I think about it, and I'm like, you know what? That no from God telling us, hey, no, don't try to hold on to it. Let it go. I think about how big of a blessing that has been for us, honestly, and this is not anything bad about our old building. I loved our old building. I got married in our old building. I loved it. I loved that facility, but that facility was going to hold us back. It just was. We are able to pursue God's will for our church in a way that we probably never would have been able to do at that location. We're going to be able to expand in ways we probably never would have been able to expand in that location. So I'm thankful for that no. We need to be thankful for the times that God says no in our life. And how we can be in tune with that, I know as a church, the way that we were able to know when God says no is because we have a praying church, don't we? We have people in our church who pray, who seek God's will, who fast. We have a board of directors who pray, who fast, who think about these things, who seek God's will on what's the wisest thing to do. And they did. And that's how we were able to know. That's how we've been able to follow God's will throughout this time. And here's one thing, another moment that we see from Nehemiah that's so true is whenever we say yes to God's plan, like we said yes to God's plan. We're like, you know what? Yes, we'll let go of our old building. We'll walk into the unknown here. One of the things that's so vital and so important is that whenever we say yes to God's plan, we don't just stop there. We also say yes to God's providence. You know what providence is? Providence, the literal definition for it is God's sustaining guidance. His sustaining guidance. His hand that doesn't just set you off, but he guides you along the way. And let me tell you, it can be very tempting, very, very tempting to say yes to God's plan and then no to his providence. Oh, God, you want me to, okay, marriage. Yes, marriage is a good thing. I see it's a good thing in Scripture. That's awesome. Now you go sit over here, God. I got the plan. You let me figure out how to manage this now. You let me figure out how to do this. It's a whole nother thing to say, yes, God, I'm going to pursue a relationship with someone, and I'm going to pursue your providence, your sustaining guidance throughout my relationship as well. That's a whole nother thing. And we see that from Nehemiah. Nehemiah didn't just recognize that, you know what, the plan, Jerusalem, the city walls, they need rebuilt. He didn't just say yes to that. He also said yes to God's sustaining guidance throughout the entire thing. You see that through the remaining pages of the book of Nehemiah. He constantly is relying on God and God's guidance to get him through, to make sure that the plan is executed the way that it needs to be executed. We need to say yes to God's plan and say yes to God's providence. Because when we say yes to God's providence, when we say yes to his guiding hand, he can do so much more. He can give us insights. He can bring people our way. We can do so much more than we would ever do on our own. Has anyone ever heard of Tom Shoes? Tom Shoes. Okay, Tom Shoes is an incredible company. It was started by a man named Blake Makowski. Started the company back in the mid-2000s, I believe. Back in 2006, he went on a trip to Argentina, and while he was there, he met some people who were there with a relief group, and they were giving away free pairs of shoes to kids who were in need. And it really moved him because he realized, wow, that's a need I just wouldn't have even considered. Didn't even think about it. So later, he's thinking on it, he's praying on it. He's a Christian man. He's praying about it man, this really troubled my heart. This is something that stirs God's heart, and it stirred his heart as well. And he realized there's a need here. So he's saying yes to God's plan, you know what? Okay, I know I need to do something. God, this stirs your heart, it stirs my heart. I'm going to say yes, I'm going to do something. But he didn't just stop there. He said yes to God's providence, yes to God's guiding hand, his sustaining guiding hand. And so God brought people into his life, brought advice into his life as he was praying and thinking on this, who were saying, hey, you know what? Giving away shoes is nice, but Blake, what about that kid's next pair of shoes? Because that kid's 8 now, and you're going to give him a pair of shoes, and what happens when they're 10? And those shoes don't fit anymore. Forget about 10. Kids grow like weeds. What about when they're 9 and those shoes don't fit anymore? Then what's going to happen? You've already spent your money. It's already gone. You've already done it, and that's it. And so he started thinking on it. He started praying on it, and that's how he came up with the idea. And Tom's is the first company that really revolutionized this idea that tons of companies do now called 1 for 1. And so he realized, you know what? If I don't just straight up give these away, if I sell shoes back at home, if I sell shoes in the United States to people, and then my business model is for every pair I sell, I give a pair away for free, I'll be able to do so much more than I would just giving this all away in one big shot. You know, back in 2018, so this is even a greater number now, back in 2018, Tom's Shoes has given away over 60 million pairs of shoes to kids in need around the world. That's incredible. Do you think he could have done that on his own if he would have just said yes to God's plan that stirred his heart, but then said no to God's providence, no to God's guidance? No, God, I got it from here. I've got some good ideas. Let me handle this on my own. Of course not. He needed to not just say yes to the things that stir God's heart, but then also yes to God's sustaining hand as he guided him along the way. And I love that. Listen to how Nehemiah says this. In the middle of talking to the king, it says that Nehemiah prayed. The king asked me, what is it you want? This is verse 4 of chapter 2. The king said to me, what is it you want? Then I prayed to the God of heaven. Right there, right in the middle of the conversation, Nehemiah is relying on God's guidance. He's relying on God's favor. He's relying on God coming through for him. The same is true for me, and the same is true for you, not just for our building as a church. Man, in your own individual life, like I said, we're running 2 tracks today. We're talking about the facility, but I'm also talking about you personally. In your own life, you can't just say yes to the things of God, but say no to the way of God. Like, oh, yes, marriage is great, and yes, careers are great, and yes, finances, handling them all, that's all good stuff. But God, I don't want to say yes to your way of handling those things. We don't get to do it that way. And if we try it that way, we will fail. We will fail. Nehemiah would have failed, but he said yes to God's plan, and he said yes to God's providence, and it worked out for him. We need to do the same. So if you do those 2 things, if we do those 2 things, if we allow our heart to be stirred by what stirs God's heart, and if we say yes, not just to God's plan, but also to God's providence, this is what I'll tell you, and this is what Nehemiah realized too, we need to be ready. We need to be ready. If you say, yes, God, what is capturing your heart, that's got my heart too. And God, I'm going to say yes to your plan. I'm going to pursue this thing I'm going to pursue raising my kids this way, or I'm going to pursue this at work. I'm going to pursue this relationship. I'm going to do these things, and I'm going to do it your way. I'm going to follow your providence, rely on your sustaining guidance the whole way through. If we say yes to those 2 things, you better look out, because you have no idea when God is going to move his will and his plan in your life from concept to concrete. You have no clue. You have no idea when God is going to do things in your life that suddenly it seemed theoretical. It seemed, well, one of these days I'm planning for it, and all of a sudden that opportunity is at your doorstep. You have no idea when that will happen. Listen again, this is Nehemiah. So Nehemiah, he goes before the king. He's looking sad. I got to imagine he's really laying it on thick, like, oh, here's your wine, king. Here you go. And the king's like, what's wrong? Oh, you noticed I'm a little down today? Why? How'd you notice? Like, right? He's laying it on thick. He's getting the king's attention. He lays out what's wrong. And then I love this. The king starts asking him questions. He doesn't just say, what is it you want? Which is kind of like the base level question. The king then asks him, okay, well, how long will your journey take? When will you get back? The king starts digging a little bit deeper past just that initial question. Now imagine if Nehemiah would have just had his heart stirred by God, his heart captured by what captures God's heart, and he says yes to God's plan. He's like, yes, God, I'm gonna ask the king about this. I'm gonna see if he'll let me go. But he wasn't actually ready. What if he wasn't actually ready for the king to move this concept to concrete? Imagine that moment. The king, well, how long will your journey take? When will you get back? I don't know. I haven't really, haven't thought that far out yet. I just thought I'd just ask you if I could go. Okay, well, I mean, are you going to need anything? Probably. Can I spitball it with a few people and then get back to you later? How would that have changed things? Maybe he wouldn't have got the green light. Maybe the king would have been like, you know what? let's wait on this. Let's wait a few months until you flesh this thing out a little bit more. He may have missed his opportunity, but Nehemiah was ready because we have no idea. We have no idea when God will move his plan from concept to concrete. We need to be ready. I can remember whenever I was at Allstate, I worked there during the year 2016. That's the year the Cavs won the title. And I can remember our PTO, our paid time off, it was split up in half. So the first half of the year, the second half of the year. The first half of the year is whenever we go on vacation. So I barely had any PTO left, but I was holding on to it. I had a little bit left in my bank, and I was holding on to it because I was praying that the Cavs would win the title. I was just like, please. And it's on my bucket list to go to a Cleveland sports championship parade. It was on my bucket list. And so I kept my PTO available, even though there were all these days where it would have been like really nice to take off to go like have a pool day with Jess and the kids or something like that. But I'm like, nope, I'm going to hold on to it. And sure enough, you know the rest of the story, right? Cavs are down 3-1. They stormed back, beat the Golden State Warriors 4-3. And guess who had PTO? This guy, right here. I put that thing in. I'm like, there you go. Sayonara. I'm going downtown Cleveland, right? Like I'm checking this thing out. And so I was down there. I had a blast, like just one of the greatest days. It was so much fun. And the whole reason I was able to go, was because I was ready. I was ready just in case the opportunity presented itself. Even though it looked unlikely, even though it looked like, well, I saved up all this PTO and missed all those days for no good reason, I still held on to it, and it paid off. You have no idea in your own life when God is going to move that plan, that dream, that wish from just concept, from just theoretical, from just, man, wouldn't it be nice, to concrete. To all of a sudden, you will have an opportunity. All of a sudden, that person will come into your life. All of a sudden, that job will be laid at your lap. And you want to be ready. Like, you want to be able to seize that, not go, oh, well, man, okay, let me try to get my resume together. Let me try to talk to this person. Let me try to make sure, that person is suddenly on the market. Like, well, let me now try to become the kind of person that person would be interested in. Like, you got to be doing all of that work right now. Be ready because you have no idea when God will move his plan from concept to concrete. We had no idea that COVID-19 was coming. No idea. God didn't give us a tip. Like, hey, you might want to be saving up some money. Like, we didn't know that. But if you were with us Christmas 2019, you know that we had a big year-end offering called Vision and Victory. We had no idea why we were doing it. Really. Like, as a staff, we knew that we needed to do this. We prayed about it, but we were like, but what do we fundraise for? What are we telling people? Like, we're not just going before people and just saying, give money. Like, we need to have a why, right? Any concept, you need to have a why. We're like, well, we don't really know because God hasn't really fleshed this out. And so the way we worded it, we're like, this is just money to help Cornerstone move forward, to just help move us forward. We don't even really know what that looks like. And we share that with the congregation. We're like, we don't even know what this looks like, but we just need this fundraising to help us move forward. And so we brought in over $70,000 during that campaign. Incredible, absolutely incredible. And little did we know that in less than 3 months, our church would essentially be shut down. Everyone would be forced to be home. We would need really good streaming to be able to stream our services. And guess what? We had the money and the capability to be able to do it. We had the money and the capability to be able to keep our church afloat during a time that so many places have had to close down. We never had to. That's incredible. All we were doing was trying to follow God and honor him and obey him. And when the worst thing happened, when it went from concept to concrete, it was real, it was actual, we were ready. I want you to be ready. I do not want you to miss any opportunities in life because you weren't ready. And the same is true for us as a church. I want us to be ready. We have no idea what God's going to do with this campaign. Who knows? Who knows how quickly this thing could go? We have no idea what other checks God could be bringing our way. We have no idea what God could be doing in our church. All I know is we need to be ready. We need to be ready for whatever he's going to do. The consultants that we've worked with before, they were telling us, like, hey, just so you guys know, when your church is built, it's not a question of if you guys are going to grow. You're going to grow. Like, that's going to happen. You're going to get a gigantic influx of people. Your location right here, your name recognition in the community, you're going to grow. So it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. The only question of if is if you guys will be ready. Will you be ready for the people? Will you have teams in place to be able to accommodate that many people? Will you have the structure and the systems built into place? So that's what we're trying to do right now. We're trying to get ministry partners built up. We're trying to get our systems fine-tuned, and we're trying to get everything ready so we are ready when the time comes. So we're ready when the opportunity presents itself. We have no idea when God will do that. So we're getting ready, and we're staying ready. I want to advise you to do the exact same thing, because you have no idea when God is going to move his plan in your life from concept to concrete. You have no idea. And I will say this, as you're waiting, just keep working. Just keep working. Just because it feels like the plan is on pause doesn't give you an excuse to not be productive. Keep being productive. Keep doing the things you know you're supposed to do. Keep following God's will to become more and more like Jesus. And I promise you, when the opportunity presents itself, you will be ready. That's what we're trying to do. That's what we're trying to do as a church. We're taking every step we can to make sure that we are ready for this next step of what Cornerstone Church looks like. And we are seeing ourselves move closer and closer from the concept phase to the concrete phase in so many areas, especially when it comes to our facility. Actually, we have a special guest with us today. You might have heard it in the pre. Monty Trask, who is the president of Construction Team Management, he's heading up our project design. I'm going to ask Monty if he would come up to stage and join me. If you would, help me welcome him as he comes up. So exciting to have him with us today. Monty's going to be answering just a few questions for us that we've put together around our project and around his background a little bit. Monty, thank you so much for being here today. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Yes. He's just an incredible guy. So day one, whenever we met him, me and Rachel Carpenter went to a church down in Dayton to kind of meet up with Monty, and we fell hard for Monty. He's such an incredible guy, such a humble guy, loves the Lord, and so I'm so excited for him to be here and for everyone to get a chance to meet him here today. Monty, I'm going to start off with the first question. Just could you share a little bit about your background in the construction industry and just talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I've been in construction now for 40 years. Wow.
You're like, whew. Right? That's amazing.
I started off, oddly enough, as a framing carpenter, and then got into custom home building, designing and building custom homes, and then eventually I moved into the commercial marketplace where we build anything from a Bob Evans to a Gap to an Old Navy to $100 million shopping center. So it's been kind of a wide range of, I could build you a doghouse.
Right.
A shopping center.
There you go. Right.
So it's been a long course, and it's evolved, but
That's awesome.
that's kind of what the background is.
Yeah. And how about church? What's your background in church?
Well, I didn't grow up in the church. My dad's the greatest man I've ever met, but we went to church on like Easter and Christmas, and I can remember going to Sunday school a little bit now and then.
Yeah.
But I wasn't raised in the church. And then I met my wife. We've been married 39 years now. I met her, and why she was interested in me, I had no idea, because I wasn't church. She was. She loved God, and her family loved God. Her grandfather was a pastor, and it was important to her. So I said, well, I could try this, and so I tried to impress her, and then, instead of me impressing her, God impressed me.
Right. So good.
In spite of myself,
Yeah.
I was able to, love the Lord, and I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I need to help, or I got to be involved somehow. So I've been a student ministry staff member. I led worship for probably 18 years. So I love God. I love the church now, and it's humbling to know that, no matter where we come from, God finds us. So.
Yep. That's so great. I love that whenever he said, he was like, oh, okay, I'm going to try to impress her, and God impressed him. That is the story of so many guys in this church, isn't it? There's so many amens out there. Like, yep, that's me too.
Yeah, because he's still not that impressed by me. So.
Right. Oh, I love that. Okay, so construction team management. Who is construction team management, and what makes construction team management unique when it comes to construction of churches?
Well, probably 6 years ago, I formed a company. My best friend, he used to be my older kids. I have 4 kids, and he used to be the older three's youth minister. And he had a church project going, and they just couldn't get it on budget, and they were struggling, $2 million over budget, and it just couldn't get it. He said, can you just come and help? I said, come on, Sean. I don't want to do this. But we did, and eventually I said, I had been involved in a few church projects through the commercial side of our construction time, and it just never seemed like construction and church went together. It's not, those two words just don't go together. I mean, you've got construction, it's a cutthroat world, it's a fast-paced world, you're a one-time customer, and you're not going to get the best deal, and everybody wants to make a profit, and what you end up with is something that's could be a great building. It's not you. It's not what you thought. It's overpriced. And I said, so the whole philosophy was Sean, who has been in ministry for 30 years, he has such a unique perspective on church, from youth ministry to loving your kids all the way to being an executive pastor. So when you have someone in the organization who understands church, not necessarily that all churches are the same, but understanding the struggles of ministry, understanding the struggles of pastors' wives, the fundraising, the branding, all of those things. So we thought, what if we created this company that churches could benefit? They could define who they are without someone telling them who they are. And what if we could save them money doing that also? Because God doesn't need the money, so what if we could do that? And that's kind of how it was formed.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. Mm-hmm. We get to meet awesome churches all over the country, and hopefully, we're able to use our talents in a way that shines for you guys. So that's kind of how it was based.
That's awesome. And I mean, obviously, whenever Rachel and I met with Monty, we were obviously sold on Monty, but we met him at the church he's talking about, at Southbrook, a church down in Dayton, and whenever we got to see his work, we were just blown away. I mean, just gorgeous stuff, fantastic. And like he said, they come in, and from conversation one with construction team management, everything has been, who are you guys? What's Cornerstone's ministry model look like? What's important to you, so that they can build around that, rather than the typical construction way of, here's the kind of buildings we build, pick one. So everything has just been so custom made, and we've appreciated it. It's been fantastic. Another question, Monty, how have you seen a project, and we kind of hit on this a little bit, how have you seen a project like ours impact the ministry of other churches that you've worked with?
Well, I'll use Southbrook as an example. So one guy had a vision of building a chapel, because he was a big donor. He wanted to give a large portion of money, and he said, what if we could just have a place where we could do funerals well, and maybe have a chapel where we could do weddings? And they're like, oh, okay, well, it's a big gift. And what it evolved into was a full wedding venue that is twice now has won the Knot award for the best wedding venue in the state of Ohio. Mm-hmm. It's a unique facility. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's unique. It's them. I mean, it is everything that they could imagine. We were able to build a lot of it in shop, and it's not the fact that it's so unique, but what it does is it allows the community to come into this facility, people who would have never stepped a foot in a church, people who would never have wandered onto campus, because you wouldn't know it's a church when you drive by on the main road, and they get inside and they say, hey, these people,
they're accommodating. They loved us, and what a great experience. And now people are showing up from the community as a part of something. One of the things was they have this reception area where they rent it out to anybody. You could have you could have a company meeting there if you want. Well, there's a large Muslim community in that area, so they one time rented that out because the wives wanted to get together and dance and stuff, and the husbands, they'd sit out in the lobby, and then you'd have this
big dance party.
Big dance party, and this music, you can't understand it. It's like, what is it, techno meets...
Right.
It's something.
Yeah.
But I have seen them back there 10 times. A community that needs Jesus, and when those visions are realized and you are all in, God brings people.
Yeah.
In spite of ourselves, he's going to bring people into your facility. So you don't know what all you're going to experience, but you will experience a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
One of the things I know from meeting with Jacob and Rachel, Brenda told me last night, she said, hey, thank you for having so much confidence in them. And I told her, and I mean this, I said this last night, when we sit with people, Jacob's right, we ask, who are you? We're not going to tell you who you are. This just requires some work to get to know who you are. So it's a lot of self-evaluation. You guys can probably attest, you are probably like, well, why are you asking us that?
Yeah.
So over hours of talks and meetings and stuff, the plans that you probably have seen are a reflection of who they think you guys are. They have put together a facility that it's going to last past their ministries. They've thought about the unborn children that aren't even a part of your congregation yet. They've thought about how those kids, 50 years from now, their grandkids are going to be a part of Cornerstone. Right. And what kind of facility would require us to love the people the way we love them? And flex spaces, we tried to do a lot of flex spaces and for multi-purpose things. Some of the people that are going to be a major part of this ministry aren't here yet. They've thought about that. They've thought about if you're a grandparent. They've thought about your grandkids. They've thought about your kids. They've thought about who these leaders would encompass in these meetings and what's going to take place in this. So everything, I'd like to take a lot of credit for the design and all of that, but I want you guys to know that came from them. That's who they see you as being. So to me,
yeah. And
that's why we do what we do. We will push you to define who you are.
Yeah.
And hopefully we've done some of it.
Yes. And we are so blessed by our partnership with Monty and Sean and Construction Team Management. Monty, is there anything else you want to add in closing?
I will say there are people here that maybe you're here for the first time and this isn't your church yet. Make it your church and commit to this project. And we're not going to allow this to be hurried or forced or, it can be phased. We're here for the long haul, and we would recommend waiting. We have recommended waiting. God's going to make it happen. Jacob's well, it took a long time for that woman at the well to show up and see what was dug. And you guys, even if you're young and you think, I'm not really a part of this, you can be a part of this. You can give to this, and your money is not going to go, it's not going to be wasted. So I'm excited. Every time I come to a service like this, it allows me to see even more than I thought I knew. And this helps me because I can envision more now than I could last week. So I appreciate you all having me. It's my honor to be here. So.
Thank you so much. Can we give Monty a hand? Thank you, Monty. Appreciate it. We are beyond blessed to be partnering with Construction Team Management. As the worship team comes back up, just the last thing I want to say is as we move from concept to concrete when it comes to our facility here, I just want to reiterate what I shared back on our Vision Sunday of this year. Obviously, what we're doing here at Cornerstone is awesome and important and vital. The what we're doing behind this building and the why behind it, fantastic. But they're not the main thing. Even this new facility is not the main thing. The main thing is never what we do, but who are we becoming? That's what matters. That's why we said at the beginning of this year, we have goals for this year, and if we hit them, awesome. But our main goal is to become fully formed followers of Jesus. And if we hit that goal, then we've hit our goal. If we become more like him, that's what it's all about. And so the great thing is that while we're trusting God to build his physical church here, we know he's building his spiritual church here. He's working in our hearts. He's building us. He's making us more like Jesus. And so regardless of where we are in the concept, the concrete phase, we can praise him because of that, because he's building us. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you if you would stand to your feet and let's praise our God. We're going to sing our song that's kind of been our theme song around this entire idea that God is building his church and he's doing it right here and right now.